Paige, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Pray podcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, can you give myself and the audience a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Yes. Well, I'm a cyber safety expert. I have spent about 20 years educating consumers, law enforcement, victim advocates about vulnerabilities when it comes to identity theft and fraud, digital safety type tips. And right now, I just started a compliance management company. So we're helping businesses with their HIPAA and regulatory compliance.
Oh, HIPAA's always so fun and exciting.
Oh, isn't it though? It is. I'm knee deep in HIPAA right now.
So, how did you get into this field? Was it something that you planned on doing, that coming out of college, you're like, hey, I just want to go into consumer protection, or was this kind of someone told you, hey, we need to fill this position?
Yeah, I was very fortunate enough when I did an internship in college. I'm really originally from the Midwest, and I did an internship in Arizona. And actually, one of the people I did an internship was starting a company. It's called LifeLock.
Hmm.
It's identity theft company. It went from baby, blew up, I through IPO acquisitions, and so I was there right in the beginning. And so there was a need from a marketing standpoint and a communication standpoint to fill. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to kind of fill this um, in this company that was growing like it was and filled this educational need. I always kind of had an interest in public speaking and
Hmm.
interest in helping people. And so the fact that I was able to develop and maintain this program where we educated law enforcement across the country and worked on that content, it really drove kind of where I am now from just really wanting to get out there and help people become less vulnerable just with simple tips. There's so many little things you can do. And so that's kind of how I got here in a nutshell.
And LifeLock was, they started, oh gosh, 25 years ago now, 20 years ago?
Oh goodness, yeah. Well, actually, it was 2005. So we're coming up on about 20 years, and so now that brand is part of Norton
Yeah.
and Jen. So yeah, it's kind of evolved, but I mean that was back when I think identity theft. Well, I did not think. I know identity theft was happening, but no one was really talking about it as much. Fraud was happening.
Yeah.
You didn't hear much about it. So you definitely the messaging first, straight on was really just getting the awareness that this is happening. Let's talk about it. Let's do something about it. And so it's just interesting how, with technology evolving how it has so much just this past 20 years that scams are a lot of it's the same. They
Yeah.
might be using just fancier technology. Just a lot of the scams though in the base of it are is a lot the same.
Because, yeah, conceptually, all scams are the same.
You give me money, I'm going to have a fear-based message. Person gives money. Okay,
Exactly.
done. Yeah.
It's interesting that you were at LifeLock. A relative of mine, probably predating LifeLock's existence, was a victim of identity theft with someone working under their social security number and name and not paying their income taxes in half a dozen different states. And
Mm.
I forget how they ultimately found out about it. Probably IRS said, "Hey, you didn't you short paid your taxes. You forgot about this other taxes that you earned in these six other states."
Yeah.
And because it had been going, there were no consumer alerts from the credit bureaus at the time, that because these other individuals hadn't paid their taxes, they were taken to court, which of course they never bothered to show up. And so there was a default judgment against this person that I know. And now they were stuck with having to hire lawyers in all those states to try to fix the identity theft. And
My
it
goodness.
was, with a lot of the states, they were, well, this whole identity theft thing is kind of new, but there was already a default judgment against you. So the only way to resolve the issue is to pay the back taxes and then petition and then prove that identity theft happened and then petition to get your money back.
Oh my goodness.
And
That
so
sounds awful.
I mean, it took this person years to clean it up because it was the identity theft in terms of your credit and stuff was just such a new experience that everyone saw it as a, so we're starting to see it as a problem, but no one knew how to actually help consumers.
Right. And then there weren't the consumer resources like there are now. And even with the resources, I mean, it is like you mentioned, it's you're guilty, and he had to, this person had to prove themselves innocent
Yeah.
in not just one state or one, entity, multiple states, multiple, and that's just what's scary is, no one wants a big scary letter from the
Yeah.
IRS anyway, and here he's probably, I'm sorry, I'm assuming gender here, but they were probably getting all these notifications and thinking, oh, well, that's not me. And then you had to really take them seriously to say, I've got to do something about that. That's sounds awful.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
they made whole again? Are they better?
Yes, it is
Okay,
thankfully multiple decades in the past now.
good. Well, it maybe hopefully it's a haha after 20 years later, but it sounds awful. It does, that just does not sound fun. No.
So how has kind of, rather than let's work backwards into this, how has identity theft recovery changed since then? What kind of resources are available to people now?
Well, now there are, the Federal Trade Commission has done a really good program where it's an identity theft affidavit that is an official document that you fill out with exactly what happens, and you get this affidavit to say, I've been a victim of identity theft. So that is one of the biggest things that people didn't have previous that
Hmm.
they do now, is they can establish themselves as a victim. And law enforcement know enough about it that in some of the bigger metropolitan areas, you're actually able to file an identity theft police report and
Oh
say
wow.
you were a victim and get a police report number and an actual police report online. You don't even have to go in anywhere. And so that's really helpful on the recovery process for a victim, because a lot of these lenders, they need some form of official documentation that you are a victim, what
Yeah.
happened, your account dates, timestamps, amounts, things like that. And all of that is in best in some sort of an official form. So whether it's the FTC or a police report, that identity theft affidavit or a police report rather, it is very helpful into the recovery process of a victim.
So, excuse me, we'll edit that out. So, are there steps that people often miss in trying to deal with an identity theft incident?
Yeah, so
Because
because you are
I haven't heard of the affidavit before. No, I haven't looked into it a whole lot, but like I wouldn't have thought to have done that.
right, right. Well, a lot of times because you are, as an identity theft victim, you're guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. If you are paying a bill that was made by a fraudster, it wasn't you, then you're saying that this was me. Because, a lot of times when we're paying a bill, you have to check that box, paying it online. Have you ever noticed you pay your credit card online and you have to check a box that say, I confirm all of these purchases are mine?
Mm,
Well, if you're paying a bill or you, I don't know, have a car that was open up your name, and you're paying on that car, even though it's not you. Yes, it might be negatively affecting your credit at the time, but you're paying it. So you're admitting that you're almost, in the eyes of kind of the process, you're saying that it's me. I'm paying on it. So I would say one of the mistakes, and we steer people away from, is actually paying on things that are not theirs and they did not commit. So it's best practice to fill out those, whether it's the FTC affidavit form or the police report, and then also connect with the vendor immediately
hmm.
with those forms and say, this is not me, and come up with a plan. Now, you may not like the answer. The answer might be, okay, we will look into this. And meanwhile, your credit score is going down and down and down because you're late on certain payments, but there's forms with the credit bureaus that will remediate that,
Hmm.
but it's going to take in some cases it's going to take a little bit of time.
Okay, so yeah, so some people or some percentage of people will, even though they know it's a bad debt, they're going to pay it
Hmm.
because they don't want to see their credit score cratered, because they know if they don't pay it, it's going to negatively impact their credit.
Right, right.
Oh,
Oh, and even
that's like
even
you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
oh, I mean, yes, yes. Even let's say, give the example of automatic payments on your credit card. I find it to be extremely helpful because you're doing a million things. I
Yeah.
know on a certain date my credit card payment gets paid out of my bank account. But before that, I have a week, or before that gets paid, a week before, I have a reminder to go in and actually check my statement. Because before it's paid, I want to make sure that those are actually every single charge that I made, and no,
Hmm.
there were no fraudulent charges. Because as financial institutions, they allow 60 days to report the fraudulent activity. So if you have 60 days to report it, but you've already paid your bill, that just makes it a little trickier to get reimbursed. It might take
Hmm.
longer on their side to do an investigation because you've already paid and said that that was actually you. So it's just another tip, that if you are automatically paying your credit card, or before you pay your credit card, actually look at your statement, verify those are your transactions, and then go ahead and make that payment.
And the pro tip is to be always looking at your credit card bills, because who knows what's going to show up there.
Right.
And that's what I've really heard a lot of the credit card scams have started to do, uh, to validate cards and to see if they're going to see if the owner of the card is paying attention. They'll do smaller charges. You know, most people are not going to notice a $12 Amazon charge. They're going to figure, oh, my spouse made that, or oh, was that the refill on, my lemonade.
Right.
They're just going to assume it's a legitimate charge, and now the scammer knows, hey, I've got a card that works. Now I can start racking up the real charges.
I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, it works. That works for them because we're not going to notice, all these smaller charges. And actually, I've seen fraudsters even get away from the 5 cent, the 10 cent charges, because that's a red flag. I'm
That's
not
yeah.
spending 10 cents anywhere, so it's going to be in that kind of $6 to $25 range almost, because that can be, any lunch, or a
Yeah.
quick grocery stop into the grocery store, any of the, like you said, Amazon order. I mean, those are quickly kind of gone. When you're looking at your statement, you're like, that's probably my spouse or somebody. I think that was me. So yeah, it makes it hard.
So when we're talking credit cards here, so we're looking for transactions that we don't recognize, and reporting them right away. What about, like, what's your thought on alerts for credit cards? What amounts, how frequent, how to get those alerts?
Oh, it's a must. It is a must have. Those threshold notification alerts are for you and your convenience. In Yes, the credit card company, they do a really good job about knowing your spending algorithm and your spending habits. So you might get a text message or a message from them, but why not get them yourselves on how you feel comfortable? So the beauty about this is you can get notified every single time your credit card is used. You can do a threshold notification. So what this is, mine personally is $100.
Mhm.
Anything over $100, I automatically get a text message. Doesn't matter if it's in person or an online transaction. But I also get card not present transaction. So what
Mm.
that means is, if I buy something online, or if I have my credit card stored, let's say, in an app that I'm using, like I go to my kid loves to play at the McDonald's play place. So we get bacon and apples about every weekend, but I use the app. And so my card is stored in there. And every time, it's like 562 every Saturday, I get a notification from my credit card, because my app, it's a card not present transaction that's made. I also have set up for international
Yeah.
transactions. I get a notification. Again, these are my preferences. So if somebody else prefers $10 every charge, $1,000, doesn't matter. It's where your comfort level is. And I know for me, it's caught fraud. I've caught fraud this way, and it's something that the bank did not catch because it was within my spending
Yeah.
kind of cadence or algorithm. And I find that a extremely helpful benefit that is free. Just log on to your credit card company. It's usually in your security settings or settings. Sometimes it's in the notification settings, but go in your portal, explore that portal, see what you can be notified, and use it.
And they've gotten pretty advanced now in that you can get it via email, you can get the notification via SMS, you can get it within the app, and a lot of the bells and whistles you can say, well, if it's this amount, just do it on an email. If it's this amount, send me an alert. I'm the same way. I set my threshold for international charges at 1 cent.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
it's really annoying when I'm traveling internationally, but I know normally I'm really aware if I'm making an international purchase when I'm sitting at home, and I definitely it's not my norm, and so I want to know right away.
Right. Right. No, it's helpful. And see, and these are the tools that didn't exist or what weren't as common. Maybe one card company had these, but now pretty much any way you pay, you can get notifications. You get notifications even on your accounts from Amazon every
Yeah,
time you make a charge or every time you order something. I mean, it's just a lot of the retailers, a lot of the credit card companies, you opt into those. But the key here is, and here's the key: every time I get a notification, if it is via text message, email, it sends a what? A handy dandy link
yeah,
to check your account. So we're a little desensitized into thinking, oh, good, I'm just going to click on this link and it'll take me to my
yeah,
account and I'll go ahead and check my activity. But what we want to do is pause, because while that is a helpful link to get you where you're going, that's exactly what scammers will do too. They start sending you saying, oh, there's fraudulent
yeah.
activity on your XYZ card. Click this link to log in. And then it's going to take you to a fake website. They'll steal your credentials. So, really, a habit that I stick to. I mean, even in the most inconvenient times, I will open up a browser, go to my credit card website, or in this case, I got an email the other day. It was Ulta Beauty. You've made your platinum status this year. I was like, yes. And it said check your account. So what did I do? I know. And so I was like, oh, I could easily click on this. I'm like, nope, I'm sticking to my guns here. So I opened up a browser, went to ulta.com, logged in that way, and then I did. Oh, in fact, yes, I did have achieved that status. But that's just one example in the probably hundreds of emails you get in a week that you could easily click on that link that you want to just get out of the habit of that convenience. And in case it is a scam, go click on and go on a different browser.
Yeah, and we. I also think this is a scenario that I ran across. What today's Tuesday? Yesterday, um, I was renewing. So I have a global entry card from the U.S. government,
Mhm.
and I have it in my reminders to, hey, it's about time for me to renew it. And I actually got an email from them saying, hey, it's time to renew it. And I don't remember, where is the web page for for this program? And so I Googled. I, I thought I Googled global entry renewal, and I thought I clicked on the government website link, and the page looked like the government website. At least it was the color scheme was what I thought it should be, and I started going through the process, and I get down to the bottom, and it's the global entry program's $100 for every however many years, and it says, "Hey, we're going to charge you $149," and I'm like, "Well, when did the program change?" And I start looking at the fine print, and it's we're going to charge you $149 plus the federal government $100 fee. What's It was a company that was going to submit that they set up a maybe I clicked on the ad link
Oh
or
my
I
goodness.
misspelled something in my Google search, and so it wasn't the government website. And if I wasn't paying attention, I would have given some Yahoo $150 to submit paperwork on my behalf,
Oh my
which was
goodness.
and like I luckily I wasn't providing social security number or anything like that or a password, but I got far enough in the process that I'm like, oh gosh, how in the world did I miss that? That I
Oh my
just
goodness. I'm
wasn't.
so glad. No, I'm so glad you did. But this is a good point though, is that it can happen to anybody.
Yes.
It doesn't, I mean, I mean, I would call both of us very secure people or
Yeah.
secure minded people, going security versus convenience sort of people. And these sorts of things can happen to anybody. So I'm glad you caught that before you clicked that submit button.
It was funny because I went and told my wife, and she goes, "Oh, well, you should try to figure out how to report that website." And I had already gone off of it, and I couldn't figure out how to get back to it. I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
I don't know
wild.
what I did. Did I click on an ad? Did I misspell something? I, for the life of me, could not figure out how to get back to. I guess I could have gone back in the browser, but at that point, I'm done and
It,
over with it at this point.
right. You want nothing to do with that website any longer, but oh
I
my
don't need to be
goodness.
going back, but in my mind, it was the exact color scheme, the same layout that you would expect from the government site. They probably had a. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have used the DHS seal because that's a federal crime, but maybe they were. Um,
And
but
then you
it
would have hoped that they submitted on your behalf. Otherwise, they're just racking up the money behind the website.
and they may very well have sent out fake confirmation emails saying, "Hey, it it we'll send you an email in when your interview is when you're ready for an interview. This process could take up to 3 or 4 months. The program's backed up with applicants, and so I wouldn't have known. I potentially wouldn't have known
Yeah.
about it for months."
Right. And all because all of that seems that sounds about right. Right.
Yeah,
And you get email communications or updates. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then all of a sudden you're you're due for your next trip and all of a sudden you don't have your global entry. That would have had a huge impact in your travel.
and then I go on the actual global entry site and says, "Hey, your card expired 6 months ago and you didn't renew it." Well, I paid.
Oh man, you dodged that one.
So has that ever happened to? So has that happened to you? Something similar?
Well, actually, it was during a work. It was a while back, but I got those threshold notifications. So I got a text from Groupon. It was a few $100s, and I found that to be weird because it wasn't me. And then that's usually a discussion my husband and I have before we make large purchases. And then I got an additional one from Groupon confirming purchase. And so what ended up happening is I logged into our Groupon account. Someone had purchased a PlayStation bundle and sending it to Georgia. Luckily, it was such a fresh transaction. I was able to cancel the order within the Groupon account. I changed the password, and then the person was probably no longer able to gain access to that. But I was so, one, grateful for my threshold
Yeah,
notifications, but two, it's a reminder of it wasn't a password. We likely reused a password and some other site had a breach, and then here they were
yeah.
using those same credentials because you likely use a lot of the same usernames and passwords on websites. But it was a really good reminder that, one, couple things, takeaways for both me and my husband: the reuse of passwords. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
There's so many breaches that you have to use a username and password that's different for everyone. Two, it's really risky saving your payment information in any format. Yes, I
Yeah.
do it for some websites, but saving your payment information just makes it easier for fraudsters if they get into that account to then charge on that account. And then three, adding a layer of authentication. So two-factor authentication, whether you're doing SMS and you're having a text message go to your phone, or what I like to do now is a third-party app. So Google
Yeah.
Authenticator, Duo, Microsoft has one, and it's providing a key for you every time. So it's something you have, which
Yeah.
I have this device that has that on there, and it's also something I know, which is your password. So that's two layers of authentication that thankfully, we that because we canceled the order, it didn't go through. So it wasn't an actual credit card fraud. It was more of an account fraud. So
Yeah.
we didn't have to change any of our credit card numbers. But yeah, grateful for those threshold notifications saving me on that one.
But I like that you also have kind of a spousal notification, if you will. I mean, my wife and I
Right?
do the same thing. If one of us is going to spend more than the other, spend more than a certain amount of money, we at least let the other one know, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and because I don't. And then there's always the random. I'm going through the credit card statements, and there's, "Honey, what's this? I don't recognize that." Well, it's $49.75 last Tuesday. Oh, that was whatever. And it irks me. This is my. I'll go on a rant here. When businesses aren't clear on their credit card line, the name of the business versus where you're actually doing business, if that makes
I
sense. So
agree.
instead of it showing up on the credit card as Target.com, it shows as, TGT 859 Tustin. Okay, what the heck is that?
Yeah. Well, it would limit their amount of customer support calls if they
Yeah.
just, and there's probably a rhyme or reason, who knows? But yeah, if they could just spell that out for us, people that are actually looking at our statements and verifying purchases, that would be really great.
But I've run across it a lot with like mom and pop type of businesses.
Right.
It's, mom's bakery, but that's not really the name of the company. It's, Aunt Rosa is the name of the company, and mom's base Aunt Rosa. How would you ever know that they're the same thing?
I know. And you almost wonder, it's like, was that the process of them when they set up their account? Did they have additional name, or are they sharing an account with someone else to save on users names, or fees? I don't know. It'd be interesting to understand the rhyme and reasoning around what they post
Well,
for
and
you to see,
it's
the consumer to see.
and it's. I mean, I know decades ago I had set up a credit card processing account, and they didn't ask me what do you want to show up on the statement. Like my
Oh,
company name was absolutely. I was running a couple websites selling things, and the company name was not wasn't domain.com. It was the name of the company. And while that was in
interesting.
the footer, like, but they never asked me, hey, this is this is back when if you wanted to do credit cards on businesses, it was like 8%, no, the ridiculous credit card processing fees. But they never asked me, hey, what do you want to show up on the line?
Hmm.
And I I didn't even think about it until someone disputed a charge because they didn't recognize the company name versus the website.
Yeah, see, I feel bad for, these merchants that have, well, both sides. So you're disputing it because you don't know
Yeah,
that it's actually a legitimate charge, but then also disputing it because it was a fraudulent charge and someone, fraudulently made that charge. And here, this merchant is it likely the work or whatever they were
yeah.
selling went out the door, and that they can't recoup that. So that's it's too bad of a situation, I guess, for some of these merchants, especially small businesses that have fraud. Like they
Yeah.
don't probably have it built in their line budget to have fraud, whereas some larger retailers have a line item for fraud built
Yep.
into their budget already, so they already know that's going to happen, and they could easily kind of recoup that. In a sense, they have a line item to put that budget towards. But yeah, that's a little tricky.
I mean, that was ultimately the reason why I ended up shutting down that business was because I was getting fraudulent. People were using stolen credit cards to buy stuff from me, and I just couldn't afford. I couldn't at the time. This was quite a few years ago, 20 plus years, 20 years ago. I couldn't figure out how to figure out the fraudulent orders, and I can't afford to be shipping product out and losing the product and then getting the credit card reversed and then having to pay a
Oh,
penalty
that's a
because I had a
bummer. That's a bummer that you had to stop doing
but
that.
but it was a but it was a massive lesson of like, oh gosh, you
Yes.
really have to think about these things when you own a business, that it's not just, hey, do I make money on every transaction? Well, what if someone steals something
Right,
that'll
right.
impact you?
Well, I don't know. Now I get I'll be talking to people, they'll be like, "Oh, well, you can't duplicate. There isn't as much fraud anymore because of the chip cards."
Mm,
And while yes, chip cards has cut down on fraud, you still have, I actually have a card here, I'll just show for visual. You still have this magnetic strip on the back of this chip card. This is
yeah.
an old card, so don't, somebody's trying to try to charge this, charge all you want. This is an old card. But yeah, this chip card, yes, this is an encrypted transaction. So it is, but what's on the back, if the fraudsters get a hold of it, this is all static information of your credit card information. So it could easily be duplicated with a skimmer, and fraudulent charges can still happen because we can complete online transactions with just plain text, credit card numbers. So
It's we've made this great security mechanism, and then we're going to fall back to this thing that's totally not secure.
I know. Well, I know. You know what? That's so interesting because, I was at the store the other day and for some
Can I
reason my
can I
chip,
can I peel off the magnetic stripe, and will they still
no,
accept it?
they will accept it. So you can actually, I've heard of people just kind of like snipping it, like cutting
Ah,
it, because really all they're wanting to do is use the mag strap. So I guess if you're assessing your risk there, you could be in a situation where your chip isn't
yeah.
working. So I was at the grocery store the other day. The card I was using, I put it in. That beep that you get. Well, typically in the U.S., you have three times. Well, they'll allow you to try to do the chip, and then there'll be the fallback method, which is the mag strip. Because heaven forbid we don't complete a
Yeah.
transaction here in the U.S. But in other countries, if you can't complete a purchase with this chip, they say bye, see you later, use a different card, or come back some other time when you have a different form of payment. Versus here in the US, they're going to allow the mag strip. So yes, I have seen people that kind of cut their mag strip so
Mm.
it can't be swiped, or but then they're just relying then on the chip itself. So that works for a lot of people. Go
So
ahead.
do the skimmers are the skimmers pulling both the chip and the mag strip, or just the mag strip?
It's just the mag strip. I have one here for some of the law enforcement trainings we used to do. So this here is a skimmer. This holds about 5,000 card numbers. So this is in a typical scenario. This would be what you'd find in, I don't know, like a restaurant scene,
Hmm.
because still to this day, you give your card to the waiter or waitress. They leave. They either swipe your card or they put the chip in, and they come back and with the, tip them. It's wild, by the way,
Yeah.
that we still do that. You just give
And
my
it's
card.
and it's
Here you
just
go.
in the U.S. Other
Right.
countries, like
No, they
people from
bring
other
the point of
countries
sale
come here, they're like,
terminal.
"Wait, why are you taking my credit card away from me?"
I know.
Well, because I got to go
It
run it
is
in the
so,
back behind the wall.
with this is my apron. So no, this is not just the service industry, but just a lot of times where it is normalized to give your card,
Yeah.
is all they have to do is swipe the card like that and they have your credit card information. So this is static information. So the number is going to be the same whether I use this card, whether I clone it to this card. It's going to be the same credit card number and expiration date that's on this card. This, however, is encrypted. So it's harder to, it ends up being harder to unencrypt and
Hmm.
then encrypt on a different chip. It can be done. Takes a certain skill set, but we're not seeing it as
Hmm.
much as just the static. But then there is RFID. So you probably have seen this on your card
Yep. It
here.
looks like a
And
Wi-Fi logo.
that's the Wi-Fi logo. So that's going to be proximity card, prox card. You'll also hear, but this is where you would just wave your card in front of this machine. Usually it's 0 to 3 inches is the amount that it'll read, and then you're able to then put your card back in your wallet. We've seen some in larger, busier areas. You'll hear the term RFID bumping.
Hmm.
Well, they'll actually put a device like this. It's not going to be this, but like this with an amplifier on it. And they'll put it in their backpack and they'll just kind of like bump into people. So if you have one of these
Mm.
cards that have the RFID capabilities, then it'll automatically just skim the the information from your card. What I like to do with any card that has this RFID is put it in a foil lined sleeve. You can just
Yep.
use tinfoil too. I wouldn't spend more than 50 cents on what you're trying to do here. But yeah, you just put it in here and then it's fine. I mean, a lot of licenses, um, passports, things, all of that have RFID in them. So you'll see a lot of, travel stores that have RFID blocking shields and things like that. It doesn't hurt. I mean, the likelihood of it happening is low, but it doesn't hurt to just put them in that sleeve if you have that.
Well, and it's also one of those things where the that level of safety is very little, very low inconvenience or cost to the consumer. you can go on Amazon and buy 20 of those RFID blocking sleeves for $3 or whatever.
Right.
And it's not
Right.
that hard to pull out your credit card, put it back. It's one small extra step if you're physically using your card. It's not like
Exactly.
it's a major
Exactly.
inconvenience.
I will say I'm missing one form of payment, and that is like mobile payment.
Hmm.
So if you are using, let's say, your mobile device or your watch for payment, that is going to be your safest way to pay because it is encrypted. And when you make a payment that way, if that merchant is breached, it's not your actual card number that would be showing to them.
Hmm.
So because it's encrypted. And so that's a really the kind of the best way to pay if you looking from a security standpoint. So I usually, whenever I can,
Yeah.
one will always use a credit card, but then I mean, I usually use my watch. I feel so futuristic too. I'm like, beep, beep. Maybe it's too easy to make a payment that
Yes.
way, but it's I do get those questions a lot too. Is what about mobile payment or something like that. So I do recommend that.
And I guess the question would be, and I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are the watches and the phones at risk to the bump, the RFID bump?
It's typically it's not, and so this is a couple things. One, it's very important that you keep your operating system up to date. That is usually when it's not up to date is when there is going to be a
Yeah.
vulnerability because the fraudsters have exposed that vulnerability. But usually it takes interaction with the owner of the
Yeah.
watch. So for me, one, it has to be unlocked, but then I have to double tap it and then place it on the reader. With my phone, I've got to not only unlock it with your face or your password or your fingerprint, depending on your device, I have to activate it, then put it within
Yeah.
proximity of the reader. So there are steps on my side that make it so it's not just like this
Yeah.
Wi-Fi card that's just in my pocket or in my purse. So it's a little bit it's different.
Yeah. That to me is I'm one of those people that I use my watch whenever I can. I don't I'm happy to like if I can go a week, a month with never pulling my wallet out of my pocket, I'm a happy camper. I'm
Yeah.
still surprised though at major grocery stores and businesses that I would expect. They're like, "Oh, I've never seen someone pay with their watch before." I'm like,
Same.
"Really?"
That is, Chris, that is so funny you said that. I was at the Dollar Tree the other day, and then the person checking out is like, "Oh my goodness, I've never seen anybody do something like this." I loved it actually. I thought it was, well, my glad it could be your first. But it's just it was just so funny to me because oh well, it happens.
Yeah.
It's super easy.
So, no, I forgot my question.
So,
So, with your experience, like you've got the skimmers there. Have you ever run across a skimmer in person anywhere
oh
that
no, I
that
haven't.
you
And
know that like
not
that
that
you know
not
of?
that I'm aware of. But here's the thing. Here's my theory on that is that I want it too bad. So I don't know. Tell me if you do this. So even if I am at the gas station and I'm putting my card in, I'm always tugging on what you're putting your card in to, and in hopes of one finding a skimmer. I don't know. I hope that for me someday. But yeah, they exist. These overlays are extremely intricate and they're easy. It's so easy to buy online for these fraudsters. I mean, it
Uh,
used to, require a certain skill set that, required you to take apart these skimmers and then place them. Oh, actually, I have a gas station pump one. All this gas station one pump is this little skimmer here. It's taken out of its hard shell and then placed into
uh,
this. And so you'd open up the gas station pump, put it in there. And so you would be none the wiser at a gas station pump. But now you can just buy them when they're already like this online. And I'm not advocating for that. This
no.
is educational only. But it just makes it easier for fraudsters to just not be as technical as maybe they used
Yeah.
to. But still be able to commit this kind of low hanging fruit and a kind of like low level crime.
I have to admit, even if I'm paying for my gas at a gas station with my watch, while waiting for that transaction to go through, waiting for my watch to beep and authenticate, I'm tugging on the credit card reader.
Yes. Yes.
I haven't found
Oh
one
man.
yet.
Well, I'd be interested. I'd love to hear somebody who has found one because I did. I mean, I've seen a number of articles where the entire face of an ATM has
Yeah.
come off, or where they're putting their credit card in has come off. But yeah, never anybody I've known personally. So I'm waiting for that day.
Do you know of any reports that talk about what credit card ATM machines are safer to use, less safe to use? Are there ones that you should never use? I have my own
Yeah.
opinions
Well,
and theories about this, but well, I'll see what you say.
well, it's safer to go inside the branch. It always is going to be safer to go into and talk to somebody. That's kind of like the first
Yeah.
level, but that's not always, you can always do that. But then the ATM located inside the branch, if you don't want to talk to somebody, that's kind of like you're safer. What wouldn't be as safe is ATMs that are kind of these standalone ATMs and have no bank affiliation. Those are usually run by individuals or outside companies,
Hmm.
and while they should have to abide by certain security standards with their ATM, they're sometimes usually not because they're kind of like these standalone ATMs. ATMs at festivals, ATMs that are in a dark alley. Yes,
Yeah.
there are ATMs in a dark alley. I mean, like ATMs at hotels, ATMs. I mean, those that are not being monitored and also likely until they're putting money back in, which is probably weekly, and then they find a skimmer. You want to go to a kind of a highly active
Hmm.
ATM because likely then they're putting more money in every other day. So they're going to spot a skimmer or anything kind of weird going on with that ATM. What's your theory?
I generally work from the theory of where are people going to be in a situation where they're going to be least likely to notice a fraudulent transaction? And so I think touristy locations. So
Mm.
if there's, I don't know, some really popular plaza in some country that you're visiting, that's going to be where the scammer wants to put the skimmer, because one, you're on vacation. It's probably going to be a lot longer time before you uh, look at your bank account, so they've got more time to execute fraud. It's an ATM machine that in different countries things look different. So if something doesn't look or feel right, you're going to be less likely to notice that it's wrong.
Hmm.
You're distracted by what's going on, just like all your you've been desensitized, you're distracted, all these kind of things that lower your guard in my mind. Now, maybe people are more paranoid in those situations and are tugging on the skimmers like you and I are. But like in my mind, if I were a scammer, that would be what I would probably want to do. But again, like the standalone ATM machines as well that aren't associated with a bank, I don't even want to get near those things, let alone actually use them.
I think I think people are surprised to know that those exist. That it's entirely it's a business that
Yeah.
a lot of them at the gas stations and stuff are not affiliated with any sort of bank or anything like that. So yeah, it's interesting, which is why threshold notifications.
Well, and those things usually charge horrific transaction fees.
They do.
That's how that entity makes their money, is that $20 that you took out of your took that you thought you that $20 bill that you got out actually cost you $25 or something.
Exactly. And but people they need the cash and so they will do that. So it makes it again, it's like all this just kind of low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And that's why, just making little tweaks in how you pay and just not just assuming this is how we do it. So this
Yeah.
is how I'm gonna do it. It just you just have to make small tweaks and more of awareness things. I found to be the most helpful in just kind of spotting tricky or weird things because you're actually paying attention in your
Yeah.
where. So yeah,
And I think it's always the trust your gut. If something feels weird, and it's not a life or death situation, you don't need the money to go to the hospital. Go to a different machine. Go to one inside a grocery store, somewhere where it's lit and there's cameras pointing at the machine.
exactly,
That sort of thing,
exactly.
because it's although I have to admit, I uh, on my last trip, even internationally, we only use cash for tipping people. Like these days, you could almost. I don't. It's probably been 2 months since I've gone to an ATM machine and gotten cash. I don't
Right.
know. Since COVID, no one wants to touch cash anyway.
It's so true. I mean, unless you're my child and you want to go with those little vending machines, little claw things, I need cash for those. Although those take credit card now. And then
Oh,
nope, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But same, Chris, I have not used cash in such a long time. For yeah, no, it is interesting.
I guess that reduces our cash, getting the cash out of the ATM. Any before we wrap up here, any thoughts between using debit cards versus ATM cards? I know in consumer experience, it's almost the same consumer experience, but on the back end, is one more risky than the other?
Oh, I have thoughts, yes. And that is to use a credit card. So versus a debit card. And here's the reason why. If you're one, you have 60 days to report the fraudulent activity regardless, for both. However, if there is fraud, let's compare the two scenarios. You have fraud on your credit card and you report the fraud. You're not liable for anything. You haven't paid anything out of pocket. And usually it takes, I don't know, 5 to 10 business days for them to do their, usually it's quicker, but to do their investigation internally. And the reverses are reversed. And you, other than getting maybe a new credit card number, you're not out any money. You're spending the credit card
Yeah,
company's money. Debit card, on the other hand, okay, that same charge, that is debited out of your account. And the fraudster could keep going and going and going and withdraw all of the money from your bank account. You have overdraft protection. Oh, all of the money from that savings account until you've one reported the fraud, and then two, they've done an investigation and they have reversed the funds. Meanwhile, you've got all the bills, all
yeah,
your bills from cell phone to internet to kids' school practices or events, all of those things are due. And so sometimes they've taken the ability to then pay for those items. So
hmm,
then you're in a scenario where now you're not paying your bills on time, all because you don't have access to those funds until they're reversed. So the fraud was using your money. So for this scenario, just alone, I mean, just that alone, I use the credit card. But you
yeah,
also, and you'll get people that they manage their money best using debit cards. They
yeah.
have to, maybe the history with a credit card or maybe a family member's history with a credit card is not a positive one. So that's how they found best to budget. If that is the case, you run it as credit versus debit. It's still coming out of your bank account, and that scenario will still apply where your money is out of your account. But at least don't be putting your PIN number into multiple places to
Yeah.
have transaction to reduce your risk there. But short answer: credit card versus debit card.
I know one of the things that my wife and I do is we have just because there's weird times when you travel, you may need cash when you're outside of the country. We have
Mhm.
a debit card that we specifically use for traveling that doesn't have overdraft on it, that there's enough cash to support what we might need to do on a vacation, but it's not the regular bank account that we would use. It's not where our paychecks get deposited. So in my mind, it's, well, if this card gets compromised or someone steals this card from me or it gets skimmed, I know my maximum losses are this, and it's not going to impact where I pay my mortgage from, where I pay all my other bills from. So I kind of like
Yes.
I've kept it siloed in its own little thing, and like that's the only thing I use. There's no other accounts at that bank. So if something goes horribly awry, it can't infect anything else.
That is impressive. And way to go. That really is the best practice, what you're doing. And, you might get people are like, that's so extra. But it's like, no, you need to do that because, at least for me, I've seen the impact of fraud,
Yeah.
at least my time with seeing a number and working with a number of victims that don't have access to cash. Just that extra step. Yes, it takes a second to set up a bank account and get a debit card and all that stuff, but not a lot of time in the whole scheme of things to
And once
that
it's
extra,
done, it's not like you have to redo that
nothing you have
process
to
every
do.
6 months. I mean, they'll send you
Right.
the new cards for in the mail, and you don't even ever have to go into that
Yeah.
bank.
That's amazing. I'm impressed. Very cool. Very cool.
Do you think I'm paranoid much?
Well, here's the thing. Some may call it paranoid, right? But you're very educated, and you, in the sense that you had enough fraud stories and you know tech, that's
Yeah.
exactly kind of the steps you have to take. So, yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is not based on lessons that I've personally experienced, but lessons I've seen other people experience. Where I know someone who their debit card did get compromised and their bank account was drained, and it was the same sort of thing where, oh great, my rent check bounced, and I can't make my
yeah,
car payment, and all that eventually got sorted out. But going to your landlord and saying, "Oh, I let me write you a new check. I'm sorry," the landlords they don't take real kindly to that.
no, they really don't. Yeah, I mean, the best lessons that we can apply in our life are ones that we can learn through others, right? At least when it comes to fraud that way. A big thing I hear, at least years ago with my education, I had heard it a lot more, was oh, that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah,
But
no, it will.
now, okay, if it doesn't, you're so lucky if you don't have an identity theft or a cyber safe security incident. But there's enough people in your circle that this has happened to,
Yeah,
that you should, take those learnings and apply whatever it is you're going to do to help be more secure.
yeah. I have a one or more of my credit cards gets compromised or the cloned or however you want to say it. It probably happens every couple of years. I've got to get a new card issued, and it's the sort of thing that comes up in regular conversations with friends and family. I had to go through the hassle of getting a new credit card, and all those 45 different auto bill pays. I now had to go update every single one of them, and it took me 4 days, and I forgot one, and then I got hit with a late fee because the charge didn't go through. And,
Yeah. That's why one of the reasons why using a service like PayPal or similar is helpful, because then you update your card one time and it's then updated
yeah,
for, other automatic services that you might have. I found that out the easy way, I should say. When I recently had fraud, I was like, well, this was a lot easier than connecting with
yeah.
all of the other places. So it's an option for people if they prefer that route.
I haven't tried to switch over to doing that because then it's yeah, you only have to update it in one place. I'm gonna have to look into
Right.
that. But then I've
Some
got to
actionable tips here.
make sure that my PayPal account is extra secure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
I
Yes.
guess in some of these things you're risk shifting. I'm moving the risk from one place to another and maybe
You are
increasing risk or local you may feel more comfortable increasing risk with an entity that you know has really good security and lowering the risk with someone who has bad security.
exactly. No, and that's really just a lot of these choices you're making, whether it's how you're using your phone, the security settings on your computer, your tablet, your identity and form ways of payment. You're assessing your risk, you're assessing your family's
Yeah.
risk, and then you're making that decision. So the the part of with any kind of assessment of risk is understanding where you're vulnerable,
Yeah.
and then understanding the action and steps that'll be need to be taken if you do become a victim or something bad does happen. So I think that's part of the risk assessment that is missing a lot of times when people do make kind of the convenient choice
Yeah.
versus maybe a more secure choice.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up here, where can people find you online if they want to find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So check me out, Paige Hanson. My current company is Secure Labs, so securelabs.ai, and I'd love to connect and talk tech with anybody who'd like to.
Awesome. Paige, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much.